Are the NBA's new anti-tanking proposals actually good? Will they actually work, and why? It actually could help the Pacers in future seasons. Plus, Tyrese Haliburton's playing 5-on-5, and so much more to get to on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today, so much to get into. The NBA has a leader for their anti-tanking proposals, and it's okay. I want to talk about what it means for the Pacers and why in future seasons it's actually kind of nice timing for the Pacers, depending on how this goes. I got asked in the Everyday Club about the Pacers offseason. Can they keep both Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd and things of that nature? Tyrese Haliburton's playing 5-on-5, G League awards, so much more that I want to get to today. And I also, mea culpa, I'm sorry. I told you guys to make fun of me if I don't have a guest today. I booked one. We were going to record at 4. I forgot that I was kind of helping teach a class at IU Indy at 4:15. So we couldn't do it. And so it's just me, and you get to make fun of me. Everybody likes making fun of me, but the Pacers play every single night that there's games the rest of the season. None of their tanking fellow teams played on Wednesday, so we can get right to fun stuff, which is a different tanking topic. The new proposal by the league about how they're going to do this. Somehow I accidentally closed the ESPN tab. But though, according to Shams Charania, there's a gaining traction portion of one of the NBA's anti-tanking rules. And I'd like to remind everybody, because I've gotten this question multiple times, Adam Silver said at his presser, any changes to the lottery, to this process, would go into effect next season. Nothing the Pacers do this year, none of their odds will change. That's off the table. That would make no sense. Teams made decisions this year. Obviously, teams have made decisions for future seasons. But anyway, the thing he said on NBA Today on ESPN, he said the anti-tanking proposal with the most momentum within the Board of Governors was the one where the lottery expands to 18 teams. That includes the play-in teams. The bottom 10 get equal odds. And so is this actually good? Is this going to work? Because the Pacers, obviously, if that was their situation this year, they would have locked up the top possible odds like a month ago, and those odds would have been much worse, much worse. It doesn't say specifically in this proposal what the odds are, just if it's just for the first pick or if it's just the top 4 or anything like that. But here is what this proposal is. This is what Shams Charania reported in an ESPN story on March 27th, and then following up today saying it has the most traction. The bottom 10 teams that miss the play-in tournament, all right, so there's 5 in each conference, and the 8 that qualify for it, all will be a part of the draft lottery. The bottom 10 teams will have an equal 8% chance of moving up in the lottery, which to me, moving up would be going into the top 4, not just generally moving up. And then the remaining 20% of the odds would be split among the 8 play-in teams in descending order from 11th through 18th, all 18 spots drawn as a part of the lottery. So here's what I think about this. To me, let's back up for a second. This is okay in that it does probably incentivize teams to not just be garbage, right? The teams 1 through 6 have the same result as teams 7 through 10. There's no reason to go to the very, very bottom unless you have a protected pick, like the Wizards and the Pacers and the Jazz do this season. So in some ways, this might help a little bit, but in other ways, there are still situations where teams might want to dive still very far down, like 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of down. So I'll start with this. My hypothesis going into Adam Silver coming up with his solutions was this. There are things they could do that would help, but any solution that does not completely divorce the draft positioning from record is only going to change behavior, but not eliminate tanking. And I don't think they should completely eliminate the draft from, or the draft order from inverse standings, because there does need to be some way for those teams to have access to those players, which is a very hard spot for me to be. I'm loosening my stance on that because of how bad things get in the NBA sometimes. And to be clear, this is not a shot at any of the teams doing what they're doing. The Pacers, the Nets, the Wizards, the Jazz, anybody. The league has set up rules, and they are doing what is best for their team. They are not doing anything, that I think is poor strategic management, but I do understand the league trying to curb this. So let's pretend it went to this way, right? The Pacers were eliminated from the postseason. They were the first team eliminated, right? Early March, late February. I can't even remember the date. It was a long time ago, right? At that exact moment, that's it. Their lottery odds would have been 10%. And so what this is, something I do like about this specific proposal is the play-in teams being included. I'd like, for example, right now, Golden State's in 10th. They have no prayer of winning anything, for example. Like what do they care? Like they might prefer lottery odds if they didn't give up their pick. So what is the purpose of them making the plan, right? There needs to be the same benefit to making it to not, so teams don't dive out of the play-in specifically. I'm like that. I'm all about that. And then the teams at the back end or the outside the top 10, they would be incentivized to get into the bottom 10. So there might be tanking in the middle, but not quite at the bottom. I think that is better. And I don't think that would happen till late in the season, for example, because in theory, those teams might be close to the plan and still be trying to make it. So in some ways, what this would do to me is just change where the jockeying for positioning actually happens, but it would still happen. I just think it would happen either later or to different teams at a different spot in the standings. But they need to find a way to change. If they do this route, I think pick protections would be the next thing to change, because the Pacers would still this season have been incentivized to have a bottom 4 record. The Wizards bottom 5, bottom 4, whatever it is for them to keep a top 8 protected pick. Same for the Jazz. Wizards are top 7. So all that to say, this is like better to me than the current system, but still would have some pitfalls and issues and may even lead to like a hopeless situation for a poorly run team, which the league would say, yeah, be run better. So we'll see if this actually comes to pass. I would consider this personally, for what I would hope the NBA would be, a slight improvement over the current situation. Here's where I consider this to be something of note for the Pacers, where you go, oh, interesting, is that what I wonder is, does this reduce the value of picks to trade? Because the chance that it becomes, especially unprotected picks, because the chance that it becomes phenomenal is a little different. So, for example, if you're the 10th worst team, that pick would have had about the value of the 10th pick before. If you're the 10th worst team now, it might get better. Whereas if you're the worst team, it's not as downside risky. So if you're the Pacers and you've traded away 2 completely unprotected future pick, let's just presume they keep the pick this year, but it's impossible to know. Do those picks go up in value because teams are pushed towards the middle and it's more likely that a team would be towards the middle, or they go down in value because they have less upside in terms of the actual odds? And if you're the Pacers and 2029 comes, you have no reason to be bad. None at all, because you don't have your pick anyway. So in some ways, if they are 12th worst, the Clippers would have decent odds, or whoever has the pick at the time. In other ways, the odds would be bad for most teams, because the point is to not incentivize being at the very bottom. To me, the fact that the odds would be lower for teams inside the bottom 10, which is a third of the potential outcomes, would, in theory, make it seem like that pick would go down in value slightly, especially because the Pacers would have no reason to lose on purpose. See basically the Pelican situation this year, but it wouldn't change it a lot, because the likely spot a team would land if they don't make the playoffs would be 10 through 18 or whatever in that situation, and those odds don't change a ton in this new system. But I do think in general, future picks will probably go down a little bit in value if they're unprotected. Like, that is of significance for a Giannis trade in the summer, for example, that the upside is way lower, right? The expected value to me is probably close to the same for the Pacers pick specifically, but the upside is lower, and that perhaps reduces what the value is of those picks for the Clippers right after the Pacers traded them. So in some ways, but by fortune of the league making changes, good timing by the Pacers to have done this. The other thing that I think the league has to kind of figure out is, like the Pelicans, these incentiveless teams, once they're eliminated, what can they say and enforce? Because to me, even fans right now, if you're listening to this and you're a fan who wants the Pacers to win every game, because that's what you want. I'm not telling you shouldn't think that. A lot of fans think that I talk to all the time about this stuff, right? Even they would say that they are scared of what happened to Johnny Murphy, right? If Pascal Siakam messes up his knee or his ankle or whatever right now, that's a disaster. That's an absolute disaster for the Pacers. There should be no reason for those guys to play, because even those fans that want them to win every game would like to see that player play next year. when the team is, going for it again. And so that is what the team needs, or the league, needs to figure out is how does that team fit into what their hope is for the team or for the league? Because there's so many, even if you don't have your pick, there's still incentive to not be good. And there's incentive to give runway to your young guys if you're not going to make the playoffs anyway, because they have more upside or they have more value out of the games and you don't want injuries to certain things. So there's still a lot for them to figure out. I would, again, say that this change, should it happen, would be a slight positive for my hopes for the NBA. But I do understand the potential downside risk of just like hopeless franchises. And I do understand the potential downside risk of just moving where the jockeying for positioning actually happens. And the potential downside risk of like, oh, crap, the worst team has got the 7th pick 7 years in a row or something like that, which is fine. Make those teams find other ways to be better. I think that's what the NBA wants anyway. I got a question in the Everydayer Club chat that I asked for about the Pacers' potential chance to keep financially Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd next summer based on the draft pick. Let's break down the finances again coming up here on Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, let me very quickly talk to you about two wonderful groups of people. First up is Wayfair. Wayday's here. If you've been thinking about upgrading your space, this is the time to do it. We're talking about some of the best deals on furniture, decor, outdoor essentials, everything you need to refresh your home during Wayday. Wayfair is offering up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything, making it easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. It's super easy to filter by size, style, and price, so you're not wasting time scrolling. The reviews and photos help you feel confident in what you're getting, and Wayfair verified products are vetted by specialists, so you know you're getting quality. Whether it's upgrading a room, adding outdoor pieces, or just finding something that ties your space together, it makes the whole process simple from start to finish. Wayday is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping everywhere. Head to wayfair.com April 25th through 27th to shop Wayday. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Let's also very quickly talk about Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. A few more Pacers games this season, then the playoffs, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, not always so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. Puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You can pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game. You can have tickets locked in within minutes. You can see the all-in price up front. I love that. No surprise fees at checkout. You can see the view from your seat. I love that. So you know what you see when you get there. Their zone deals are awesome for saving money. They have great last-minute options. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to NBA games with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKDOWN. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Speaking of tanking, make Locked On Kings your second listen. They're being investigated for their in-game behavior against the Warriors. That's weird because one of the two fouls that went viral was like a very normal foul and a rebound. And the other one was admittedly maybe not the smartest basketball strategy. It was a foul so they could use a timeout before the use it or lose it moment. And then they made a 3 on the next play, but giving up 2 points was a little bit strange. It just seems like poor coaching to me. But James Ham will tell you more over at Locked On Kings. Check out the Everydayer Club. That's where this entire next segment comes from. It's a new offering here at Locked On. You can get Locked On Pacers and other shows ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access, which again is where this question comes from. Join at LockedOnPodcast.com/Everydayer. And that's where we head now, because when I am stupid and forgot my schedule for my day and had to change this entire episode plan, I went there and I said, guys, I'm asking for help because if anybody has a topic, would like to know it. And Master Mike says they were wondering about the salary situation in the offseason with the pick being kept or lost. And I've talked about this a little bit, but the specific framing of their question I thought was good, which was just wondering if we keep Shepherd and Walker in both situations and we're in the market for free agents at all, could that really work, right? How would that all work? So that's a fair question. So here's how I've kind of broken it down before. Kobe Brown is the only guaranteed free agent for the Pacers this summer. So if the Pacers keep their pick, it could be that simple. I'm not suggesting that they don't keep Kobe Brown or anything like that. Just bear with me for finances. So of the 14 players that have a contract for next season, not all of them are guaranteed. Not all of them are, some of them have options, but those 14 players stack up to just under $9 million in total team salary. Right now, the latest projections, which are actually down $1 million, I talked about that a little bit earlier, have the luxury tax at $260 $1 million. That's very close, obviously, with the first apron being about $209 million. The Pacers are hoping, every team is really, that the playoffs are just spectacular and the league makes a ton of money in the postseason, and that number goes up a little bit. So obviously in that case, if they get a draft pick, and I'm just going to spell it out. I always use the full bands. So the rookie scale is the draft, the salary number, assigned to rookies picked in a certain slot in the first round. And you can't, there's a set number for the rookie scale for each pick, but teams can give players between 80% of that number to 120%. So almost always, like 98+% of the time, the player gets the 120%. The 80% usually only happens if a team is like the Knicks and they're really close to the tax and they say, hey, Pascal, you're not going to get picked in the first round unless if you take 80%, we'll pick you right now. I'm not saying that's what they said, but that seems like very reasonable. And so Pascal got 80% of the rookie scale in his first year, and then it jumped up to 120. So if you're a top 4 pick, you're getting 120%. So here's what I'm just rounding for the sake of talking here. The first pick, should the Pacers get it, that player's first year salary would be make $14.8 million. They would be the 5th or 6th highest paid player on the team next year. The second pick would be a $13.25 million player. The third pick would be an $11.9 million player. All these players would be the 6th highest paid player on the team. And the fourth pick would be 10.7, which would drop right below that McConnell Neesmith line for the next season. So you can do math. I just said if they're at $200 million and the first apron's $209 million, any of those picks, they go over the first apron. Now, there are ways for them to cut a little bit of money. Micah Potter has a non-guaranteed team option. They could decline the option. They shouldn't, but they could pick up the option and then waive him. And then they save about $2.8 million. Quentin Jackson has $2.6 million for next year, but only $275,000 of that is guaranteed. That's a way to save $2.4 million. Like I've talked about a million times. Half of Cam Jones is guaranteed. So from that $200.8 million total, they have no Potter. It goes down to $198. They have no Quentin Jackson. It goes down to $195.6. They have no Cam Jones. It goes down to $194.5. Then they could fit any of the players under the first apron. Maybe not the first pick. That would be very close depending on exactly where the first apron line comes in. And so the first place to start is as it pertains to Walker and Shepherd, who, if you look at the Pacers' salaries, there are these mid-sized guys at $8.5 million and $5 million that you go, what's their role going to be? Are they worth that salary if there's a new guy coming into the rotation? So it actually, their outlook, those two specifically who are in the question, really might depend on what number, if they get a pick, what number pick it is, right? If it's the first pick, even if you think the Pacers will pay the tax next year, maybe they will, but they'd be over the first apron with the first pick. That seems like something they would not do. I mean, Kevin Pritchard even talked about apron levels when he was talking about Miles Turner last year. To me, there are ways to cheaper do it, but also think about this. What I just said is no Potter, no Jackson, no Jones. That's only a 12-player roster with a pick. You have to have at least 14. So they would have to sign 2 players. They would go right back over the first apron. So they would almost certainly shed something. My suspicion would be that if they're close to it, for example, if they get the 4th pick and they're only, $4.5 million over the tax and they're under the first apron, they could sign 2 players and then see how the season goes. And then at the midpoint of the season, trade away their cheap guys and trade away Ben Shepherd and get under the tax and then re-sign different minimum guys. Like easy plan. If they're $5 million more over because they get the first pick, then they'd have a harder time because I wouldn't want to go into the season over the first apron if I don't have to and have the restrictions with that. They might have to shed Jarris Walker's money more reasonably, or maybe it happens during the season. But I'd like to remind everybody of this. Your tax situation is not calculated till the end of the season. So even if you think that I'm overstating how much they might have to shed money next year, they don't have to going into the season. They just probably would consider it if they're going to by next February. So that's what I think is the case. Now, here's another thing to throw in. Look, I have said many times over the years that trading TJ McConnell does not seem like something the Pacers would do, right? He is a good player. He is a beloved teammate, right? And he's been essential to them in that very few point guards, like it's hard to fit on the Pacers, and he is like probably as good of a fit as they could get at backup point guard. That said, the Pacers have very often in years past, this is the phrasing I use, if they have a player who's overpaid for their role, that player sometimes is not brought back or sometimes is traded away if they make salary shifting moves. Isaiah Jackson was, to me, a casualty of that exact thing this season, right? And so, as you point to TJ McConnell, I'm not suggesting they do this. I'm not saying he would be the cap casualty, but he is probably the only guy on the team next year that, to me, at his last year level, $11 million is fine. The year before that, absolutely. What he's been this year, that's like maybe a little rosy for him. And if any aging decline shows up next year, it might be significantly rosy. That's why I've said if TJ McConnell could be good for one more season before his contract becomes half guaranteed 2 years from now, that would go such a long way for the Pacers. But I just wonder with him if he could be a guy that, if they look to do something with that and then have like a Jackson, Jones, Nembhard backup point guard group, or they sign somebody else, who knows? I'm not suggesting they do this, but that's another way they could keep Walker and Shepherd if it comes to this. So the specific draft pick actually matters. Where the cap and the aprons actually come in actually matters. Now, if they don't get the pick, they would be under the tax with just the 14 I just said. They could just sign Kobe Brown if they wanted to keep him, or they could trade for a different first-round pick or a second-round pick or something. Who knows? And then they would be so close to the line that they could probably keep everybody. They could just cut one of their, cheapo guaranteed guards. Who knows? But that is, if they don't keep their pick, they could easily keep Walker and Shepherd and basically run back the same team with Zubats and say, this is the group. They believe in it. They clearly believe in it. It made the finals 2 years ago with a different center. But if they get the pick, which is obviously what they want, then they might have to make some decisions. And if it's totally reasonable if you as a fan say, nope, they should just pay absolutely everybody. Yeah, these are good players. They should want to keep them. But if they want all their flexibility or they're concerned about the tax, they could figure that out midseason. I would keep my eye on McConnell, Walker, and Shepherd as the guys that could get moved, and which ones or how aggressive the Pacers are in actually doing so might actually depend on which pick number they specifically get. I'm trying to go back and find other examples of the guy paid more than his role suggests that gets moved, but I only keep my pre-trade deadline cap sheets, like when they have very obvious big stuff coming. But they have done that. I promise you they have done that before. And they certainly just did it to me with Isaiah Jackson. So this will be a topic big time in the summer. Maybe I'll just do a deep dive on it when the season ends. But if the question is, can they financially keep Shepherd and Walker and a draft pick? I mean, yeah, but they'd have to probably trade away a veteran or do something they've never done in terms of team spending. And if they don't want to keep those guys, it might depend literally on which pick that they get. Let's close this out with some newsy stuff. G League Awards, Jalen Slauson, congratulations, and Tyrese Haliburton. 5-on-5 hoops. That's coming to close out today's Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, let me very quickly talk to you about Indeed. Workplace chaos. Your deadlines are stacking up. Your inbox is overflowing. And the only position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs who help you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for, the skills, the experience, the locations. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's the stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you right now, companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to their data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes at Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Because when you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support this podcast by saying you heard about it on Locked On Pacers. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Let me also very quickly talk to you guys about Betterhelp. This episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now. And it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. The reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something many people think about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without even really talking about it. The stress that comes with trying to figure everything out on your own, the expectations you feel with having everything together, how that pressure can spill into other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should be Locked On NBA Game Night. Myself and John Corrales breaking down all the games from last night in the association. Not a lot of close games. Shocker. Okay. Last things to get to, two newsy items that are of note for the Pacers. Something I said yesterday and something that came up today. Tyrese Haliburton, surprising everybody with a post today. I wonder if this would have happened at a different time had his shingles not happened for him. I think that changed his rehab, but didn't necessarily screw up any return timeline necessarily. Tyrese Haliburton tweets at 7:30 p.m. Played 5-on-5 today for the first time since June, with 2 praying hands emojis. Congrats to Tyrese Haliburton. That's a great deal. Congrats to the Pacers that no setbacks have happened, specifically with his Achilles, and that he is playing 5-on-5. Knock on wood if you are of superstition while I say that out loud. But that's great news. I mean, that's like the best news the Pacers have gotten in a long time. So 5-on-5 for Tyrese Haliburton. That's literally all the information that there is. But that's a big step, right? That is a huge step, especially if it's with contact. Getting in game shape is going to be huge. Figuring out what weight he wants to play at next year, how many minutes he can play, things of that nature. But a huge step for him with just 3 days left. Excuse me. Yeah, that's right. 3 game days left in this regular season. The other thing that happened this week, the G League announced their awards, and that you might be thinking, why on earth does that matter? The boom have been done for a while. What is this going to? Well, they named their all G League defense team, and I'm scrolling on my feed because somehow pages update. It's really annoying. They named their all defense team, and Jalen Slauson was named to the G League all defense team. There's only one team. There's no second or third team. He's the first Boom or Madden ever to have that happen. This is also relevant because yesterday I suggested, hey, is he the best two-way player on the Pacers? If he's maybe a pesky defender and a developing shooter working with Jenny Busick and is putting up numbers with some decent passing and rebounding, this is an interesting player, especially as a wing-sized player, a little older than the typical two-way development project. But as things stand, man, that's very impressive. His season has been impressive with the Pacers so far, and a well-deserved honor for him. And that just, again, adds to the cap of hey, this is something that the Pacers should continue to invest in. If anything, if he is amenable to this to me, he played Summer League last year for the Sixers. If I'm the Pacers, Jalen Slauson is playing Summer League for me this year, full stop. And if he plays well there, great. You can have your 2A or compete for it in camp. Also of note a little bit, this is more just this is how my brain works thing. The G League announced they're all G League teams, which is, their version of All NBA. Ex-Pacer, Mac McClung on first team, right? As expected, he won the league MVP. But the one that was interesting to me as you kind of sort through this, also ex-Pacer, Tristan Newton on first team, by the way. A lot of Pacer on that first team. Was on third team was Ray J. Dennis, who he was the only guy on the G League teams who played for the Pacers affiliate, which is why he made me think he played for the Boom in 2 games this season. Ray J. Dennis played 13 games for the Pacers this year. When I went back to look at his tenure, I thought it was going to be 5 or 6. And that just reminded me, and I hope for the sake of the segment, remind you just how long the season has been. Ray J. Dennis, who had a good year in the G League. He's played for 3 franchises in 1 year. Clearly teams see something in him. He played 13 games for the Pacers. He's going to end the season with more total minutes than Ivica Zubac for the Pacers. Just a crazy year of health and turnover and injury and everything. Congrats to Ray J. Dennis and Mac McClung and Jalen Slauson and Tyrese Haliburton. And congrats to you because this is the last non-game podcast of the season. Thursday night, Pacers play. Friday night, Pacers play. Nobody plays Saturday. They close it out with Detroit on Sunday. One more loss. The Pacers have the top lottery odds, and you, fan, cannot stress any more of these games. This game tonight against Brooklyn is going to be hilarious. The Nets injury report is a CVS receipt, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you all so much for listening today. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking more about this team. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.